edition of the CIES webinar. We will have today a talk on football clubs and their current challenges. And for that, we have asked 5 of our graduates from the FIFA Master and the CIES University Network to talk about, well, what they are experiencing at this current moment in different continents, in different positions. So let me first introduce our panel. It's represented by Barbara Blanco, who is a director at Racing in Argentina, and a graduate from the CIES network from Argentina. Hello, Barbara. Hello, Barbara. Our second speaker is Louis Kinziger, who is a graduate from the network in Abu Dhabi, Sorbonne, and a graduate from the FIFA Master as well, and is currently working as operation director at San Fernando, with San Fernando CD, with a third Segunda B, so third division club in Spain. Our third member of the panel is Betsy Maxfield, who is currently a director she's director of player care at Sporting Kansas City in the US. And Betsy is a graduate from the FIFA Master 3rd edition. Hello, Betsy. Our fourth speaker is Alexander Staehelin, who is head of strategy and development at FC Basel. And he is a graduate from the FIFA Master 2013. And our last, but not least, speaker is David Tang, who is the managing director of China City Football Group and is alumni of the 3rd edition as well of the FIFA Master. So welcome to all 5 of you. So my first question, and I will start with Tang maybe because the virus started there. So how is your day-to-day work in the last 2 to 3 months?
Yeah, the virus started here in China in sort of January. So we have been doing the country lockdown since end of January. And since then, in the past 2 months, we've been working from home mostly. And, most of the shop has been closed, school has been closed. But for the club here, the players couldn't really do any matches and training, and the season's actually in a break. So we're just basically working from home. And now the situation is getting much better. So some schools in some cities reopened, and our players are going back to training next week. And hopefully the season in China will start soon. Just for information, the club that we invested here in China is actually 2nd division. We bought it last year when they were in the 3rd division, and then they are just promoted to 2nd division. But it's difficult time in the past 2 months, staying home. And I think some of your countries are just experienced now. But we're see the end of tunnel now.
Okay, so let's move to Europe and see the 2 cases of Basel in Switzerland. Lex, how is the day-to-day work at the moment?
So far, it's actually everything is shut down, so we don't have any activity going on the sporting side of the football club. Of course, the business side is still partially operational. All the staff, or at least all the administrative staff, has been put on administrative leave. There's a program for that in Switzerland, which allows us to offset some of the cost for the staff, and that is being made use of at the moment. So I would say we're probably about at 50%, maybe 60% operational capacity at the moment. And not to mention that Switzerland's been hit very hard in comparison to the size of the country, and so we're trying to deal with this as good as we can. But yeah, at the moment it's really difficult.
Thank you for that. And another country that has been a lot is Spain. So Luis, at San Fernando today is a small club, and I know that you are dealing with a lot of things. So how is your day-to-day situation?
Well, quite frankly, yes, we're a rather small club, so the situation is more dangerous for clubs of our size. Thankfully, right now we do not have any leave operating on any of our staff, so we're working from home. But the same as for Basel, the operations are greatly reduced. I would say 50% at least as well. So we're trying to do whatever we can from our home to our computers, from the office to the houses, trying to keep the club alive. Thankfully, again, we all receive our salary at the end of the month, but it's not the case for everyone in Spain. The country has been hit greatly by the virus, and many clubs are not doing so well today.
Okay, well, let's move to the American continent and our two last speakers. I know that Barbara, you posted us a picture yesterday where we could see that all the decisions of the club are made as well on a distance base because Argentina is locked down as well. Tell us a bit how you managed to work.
Well, yes, Argentina is locked down for now 3 weeks. I think this will continue, even though they say it was up to Easter, but I think they will extend it a little bit more. So, well, yeah, the club, the operational part, of course, continues to be very proactive and finding the ways to not only to engage with our members, but also a team exclusively for crisis management that is very important now. So we are in constant touch with all the operational part of the club, and yes, it's a very hard situation, but with these key elements, with a crisis management team, the operational team that is still working, and of course the engagement with our fans that are our members, that, you know, here in Argentina there are no non-profit organizations, so we depend a lot of them still. So the club has been in that part very active, and of course we have a very big structure also with more than 500 employees, so they are working from home. But yes, we're all stay very active.
Thank you. Betsy, in Kansas City, how is the situation with the club and how is your day-to-day life?
Sure. So we've been on break since March 13th. Currently, we've missed 4 matches. Right now, all players cannot come to the training facility. None of the administrative staff can come into our offices. Basically, the turf and grounds guys are still working on the fields. We have security at some of the offices, but around 200 employees plus all of our athletes are working from home. All of our athletes were delivered different types of equipment, even as simple as foam rollers and bands and weights, to treadmills and bikes to try and keep fit. And then our ticket sales and service, our sponsorship guys and gals, all of them are still required to make phone calls and, you know, keep up with their day-to-day responsibilities.
Oh, thank you. What you are telling us is this crisis management we are dealing. And one of the questions we ask ourselves is how do you deal with players? How do you deal with public that are your key actors? I mean, one of the very innovative, I would say, element that has happened in this crisis is the importance of distance communication, the importance of conferences like the one we're having to keep the relation inside the club. And the concept of community is so important. How do you keep the concept of community at this moment? I don't know who wants to start. Let's start with Barbara again, because you started a bit about that. How do you deal with the community today?
Well, yes, it's very important. Technology passed from being a nice to have thing to being you need to have it. So I think clubs with more technology are now being more efficient, and I think that is a life change for every club since now on forward. So communication, well, of course, is a key element for us, as we need to engage with our fans. We need to maintain them updates, give them advice, send them communication, send them things we share challenges, videos, to maintain their, compromise with the club, because if not, they will stop paying and they will stop engaging with us. And we still have that now, even though we don't play. So for us, it's very important. The president also sent a letter speaking to everyone and addressing all our members to stay safe. And well, that was very, very well received by our members. And of course, yes, the coach and his team are in permanent contact with us, with the board of directors and with the players. And I think it's that the key element now is the possibility to maintain communication, even though we cannot see each other. So I think it's very difficult, and it's a very big challenge for the coaches and the physical department to see how the strength and condition of the players are, even though they can call or they can say, well, do or this exercise of that one. I think they have a challenge there. We'll see when this end how things worked. But yes, it changed everything.
Well, Betsy, you told us in advance before that you have to deal with very specific issue of communication with the fans, but the players as well, is it?
Yeah, and to touch a little bit with, as Barbara was saying, outward facing with our fans and our sponsors, we're doing as small things as sending out coloring pages for kids, crossword puzzles, because we know a lot of parents are at home trying to be the role of teachers and homeschooling now, so keeping them connected, but then having players from our past, which we refer to as our legends, relive, some of the glorious moments, historical moments of the club. So I think that's important. We've even done some commentary, use some of our players to redo the commentary on some games from 2018, and that's absolutely been hilarious to have 3 current players who played in the match then do the commentary for it. In regards to the day-to-day with the players, some of them are, as we mentioned, adapting fine because they have a support system here. We all obviously deal with a handful of foreign players that might not speak the language. They're religious. It's hard to get to, the place where they practice their religious beliefs or get the proper food. And we have a couple players who are trying to purchase houses right now. And that's actually been a huge struggle with players that we all know have secure contracts and are making plenty of money, but their loan, one player's loan fell through, not to his fault, obviously, but to the loan officer's company, that all of a sudden their money was in the stock market and didn't have any money to loan. And I'm closing on a house with one player on Friday, and it's going to be done instead of a nice office with shiny gold pens and a celebration of champagne. It's going to be done in side-to-side vehicles just parked right next to each other in a random parking lot.
the picture of the first page of Marca a few days ago was just showing how how Zidane is connecting to his players. It's a bit like we do at the moment. What is the reality as a small club like San Fernando? Do you talk to your players that way, Louis?
So the reality is not that different than for Barbara and Betsy here. We try to keep a daily contact with our players through the technical stuff, which I'm in contact with almost every day. They do organize those kind of trainings, like with a program called Zoom at the moment. So every day we kind of receive a report of what they did, kind of the way they worked. So it's funny to see 30 of them just training together in their homes. Luckily, they're all Spanish speakers because not all of them are Spanish. So when the thing happened, the lockdown, we had to react really quickly because some of them wanted to go back home, some of them wanted to stay. Luckily, we could communicate rather easily with them. Most of them are still in Spain because, well, they have their families here, but they left the city of San Fernando. So for a club of our size, I would say that the interaction with the fans is crucial because the city is very small. It's very traditional. The city lives with the club. It's strongly connected. So we have a very, very good community manager who organizes daily events on social media. So we've had players doing live calls or live conferences on Instagram, on Facebook, and whatever social networks, talking with the fans, getting questions, answering them. We've had also some mini games, I would say. Color your favorite player, draw your favorite player, send them back. The winner gets a jersey or a ticket to whichever game when we restart. If the crowd is allowed back in, which is another problem right here in Spain. We might not get football with the crowd. So again, this is a worry for all of us. The players want to know if they'll be having crowds. The staff wants to know if they'll be having crowd because for a club our size, the crowd is the income. Thankfully, our club has a lot of sponsors. We've got funds available, but for other clubs, it's a question of life and death. So in terms of interaction, we're trying to talk with the federation in this regard as well to keep things going on. But I'd say that the players are playing a really important role, and they're doing very well to keep the fans interactive, let's say entertained, and to have an interactive presence even when they're locked at home. So they're encouraging everyone to stay home through games, through chats, through messages, through small videos. So I'd say social network right now are the essential mean of communication for the social distancing.
My microphone. I will start with Lex. Lex, in Basel, how has this relation with the supporters and the players being developed when part of the staff is no more there?
Well, obviously, you just said it. Part of the staff isn't there, but obviously, one of the teams that is still working a lot is our communications team, and they've actually used the opportunity. I'm saying opportunity because we look at it as an opportunity to move into a more digital and a more online-driven world. We have had plans to go and utilize the sort of the digital channels more, and so while this whole COVID-19 scenario isn't obviously something that we ever want to see again, we're using it to scale up our communication with the fans and with supporters through those digital channels, and the comms team has actually really stepped it up and sort of pushed out a lot of new content. We're testing new stuff all the time. We're showing old matches, as obviously Kansas City are doing as well, but then we're doing interviews with people from the office. We're introducing people around the club that have not traditionally been presented to the public, and so we're testing different things, and what we're finding is that's actually we get a good response. So the players are actually we're starting to sort of not reduce, but we're starting to widen sort of the number of people from the club that have a voice outwards, and we take the players as part of that, but everyone else as well, and obviously then we're using that opportunity to manage the expectation of our fans and supporters in terms of what is to come still. So the messaging constantly is being adjusted based on the scenario and how it evolves. One of the things that we're obviously aware of is that responsibility, or this sort of the accountability that we have towards our members and the fans is hugely important to us. But we need to we need to find good ways to work with each other. Especially we count on our fans in terms of understanding what the situation is, and sort of that we need time to plan and strategize in order to understand what we can do, solutions we can find, etc. So, and we're doing that through a number of different channels. And obviously then that helps if one of the players steps up and talks about something that is usually not something that they talk about. When they suddenly talk about economic scenarios, that's something that the fans slightly go, wow, well, it's interesting to hear that angle from a player and not hear it from someone in the finance department, and maybe the other way around as well. So that helps us to sort of deliver the message, and it usually arrives quite well. We get good feedback on that.
Tang, your case is very specific because the City Group has clubs everywhere. So was as well in this communication. Do you have an impression that from the Chinese experience toward the other countries, some of the lessons were learned?
Yes. So as you know, our group have clubs in China, here in New York, in Melbourne, in Japan, in Spain, and in Manchester. So I think to basically during this time to engage with the fans and the community is important for us. One thing that the group across the group we've been doing is, I think as Alex mentioned, similar, we're doing lots of digital content productions. I'll give examples back to February and March, that when we all staying at home here in China. So we recorded 18 episodes of home training content that we actually posted on social media here in China, and then give particularly the kids that stay at home to do some exercise at home, to engaging with the fans and keep exercise. So that's one thing that we have been doing, and then this has been quite successful. But also that particularly related to the sponsors, because of the season has been interrupted, and we actually have been addressing what we can do to deliver something on digital format to our sponsors. So what we have been doing is actually across different clubs, we are launching an esports tournament, the esports day, so that the players, actually the first team players, together with the fans, are playing FIFA online and digitally, and then this can be scheduled, sometimes in New York, in Melbourne, in China, so becoming like a global esports day to engaging the fans, but also to actually giving something presented by certain partners, certain sponsors. That's something we've been doing, and also in terms of helping the communities. In the beginning of the outbreak in China here, the club has been actually donated medical products because that's quite needed in the beginning phase, and then we have been helping the fans that need help at home, and then this is important to engage in the community at this difficult time. And now also one thing that I also want to mention, because the season here in China supposed to start in March. So back in January, February, we have lots of contract renew with the players and also with the foreign players signing. So the window actually missed it. So we're really struggling at the moment to renew the contract, but also to particularly get some international players into China because of the travel ban. So financially, this has a huge impact on us, but also we're looking at possibly the Chinese FA is also organizing potential reduction of the player's salary and the cost to keep the financial of the club in a healthy stage, because the club we have here in China is also a relatively small club. It's a second division, as I mentioned. So this is all sort of interlinked with how we address, the relationship with the fans, but also with the sponsors, and then keep our financial, healthy, hopefully through this difficult time.
Thank you. Okay. You anticipated, thank you, Tang. You anticipated some of the question by the viewers, because the majority of the question we receive from the viewers are regarding, well, how the relationship with the various other actors, with the sponsors, how you deal with the elements that are taught in the media about voluntary cuts by the students of some of their salaries, or giving some help to the families, and so on. So it's quite interesting. The football is very connected to the concept of community, and what the people would like to know a bit is, how do you work with each other? Do clubs talk to each other? Do people try to learn from each other to get the best practices? My first question. And the second one is, what you've learned academically. Did some crisis management classes help you to behave better in this kind of moments? I don't know who wants to start. Louis is laughing. Oh, Betsy, come on, Betsy.
So here, financially, in regards to sponsors and season ticket holders, kind of similar to, I guess, the timeline of China. Here in the U.S., we started our first matches the last couple days of February. So basically, every team got in at least 2 matches or so. With that being said, we do in Major League Soccer, the athletes are actually of Major League Soccer. They're not employees of Sporting Kansas City or New York FC or Colorado. They actually get paid by Major League Soccer. So when the league office decides the mandates that we're taking breaks for 1 week, or right now we're on a break till April 24th. It's not club by club, it's by the league. But then each team can make their certain rules or guidelines on how they sell season tickets and what they charge and how they collect their money. So a little insight here. All of our season ticket holders have to be paid by the end of February in full for the whole 2020 season. So that is one, I guess, financial benefit that we have, is that we already had all the season ticket holder money in. And then we're still on track right now that we will make up all the games that we miss, since we do have plenty of time. We will start adding some midweek games, and we may extend the season a little bit through November, which in the past we've been completed by mid-October for regular season. Where sponsors, again, now it's just figuring out ways to over-deliver. To figure out, we've been doing different sponsor spotlights, as we call them, each week, and bringing them up to the forefront and figuring out how to do different engagement with them. We have a local distiller here of alcohol. Yesterday, we helped them deliver a bottle of whiskey, and they've also turned their plant into making hand sanitizer. So each player got delivered a bottle of whiskey and a bottle of hand sanitizer. Obviously, that went like wildfire all over social media, which obviously was the goal of it. So that was an example of over delivery. And each of our players were saying, you know, hey, if you live in blah, blah, blah area of town, I have all this hand sanitizer. I'm happy to refill your bottle. So bring your empty bottle over here and help yourself. So the whole community play, like we're all in this together. The saying of they're just like us, the pro players need the hand sanitizer and the quote unquote whiskey or alcohol, like all of us right now, like we're all kind of going through it. So I think humanizing it a little bit with the pro athletes, as well as just showing that, you know, if you are in need of help or assistance, to reach out. We're here. You know, the FAQ page on our website is ever growing, and we're trying to show the community that we are in it. We have 2 other major league sports, the Kansas City Chiefs and the Kansas City Royals, here locally, and all 3 of us did joint statements to the community, and just trying to show that, you know, the city pride, the hometown pride, and the local aspect as it relates to everyone.
Yes, on that element, I think the concept of the club, what a club means, is today particularly important. One of the questions was regarding you particularly, Barbara, about the fact that in a country like Argentina, when club members are the basis of the community, you explained a little bit how you deal with that, but again, do you work with other clubs to try to get the best practices on that?
Yes, of course, we work with other clubs. In the case of Racing, was the first club in Argentina to get to an agreement with his players, with the players, for what they made reductions on their contracts in order to maintain all the structure we have, the big structure of 550 employees. It's the same structure as Tottenham Club, for example, but here in Argentina, which is much smaller, right? But yes, we are making actions with other clubs, with all the clubs of the first division in Argentina. We're gathering together in order to cooperate with Caritas and the Bank of Aliments here. So we're doing a big campaign on that. The club also, of course, wrote a letter to the local and national authorities and putting all the facilities, offer them and open them up for whatever they need to minimize the crisis. And our headquarters was used last week to make blood donations. So people and all the community went, whoever wanted, of course, and we had a very, very big impact on that. And players, Racing players, also showed and compromised going some and doing the blood donation, you know, for the situation to handle it a little bit better. But also we have the Racing Solidario department, which is the solidarity department we have, and we are near everyone and all members of our club that suffer or get coronavirus or something like that. The club is there, and we try to engage with them and be near them on whatever they need. So that's very important, and that's also a thing in which our sponsors also are part of it, and that's made a big road for them to know.
Well, one of the main issues regarding the clubs and the concept of clubs is probably the reality today of, does football still matters to the life of the people? From what you have learned in this period, do you have the impression that the popularity of the game, the popularity of your clubs in the community remains very high? Give us a little bit about what you learned from this period. Who want to start? Louis, please.
Yeah, I'm taking this question because, again, with the size of the city here, the football club has a great importance. It's supported by the municipality. It's supported by almost everyone. It's a family thing, football here on the Sunday. It's almost, it's part of the culture. So I'd say that people miss the stadium. I get it every time. I get daily messages. I hope to get back. The team, I miss it. We were so close to doing it. I miss going to the stadium. So right here in the south of Spain, football is very, very important, and you can feel it. You get people telling you that the game is something they want to get back to rather than anything else. They're not telling me that I miss going out, I miss this or that. No, people are missing football, and they express it strongly on social media. We've had initiatives of fans that were created, like our ultra group. They created some kind of charity donation for associations, and using football as the means to do that. So they asked for donations, and in return, they could get some kind of recognition towards the group for when the game starts back. So football is activating, I'd say, the people of the city, and it's still very important. Actually, it's a way of life, I want to be saying. So people are waiting for the return of football, and they're showing it. They're actually very supportive of the club in this situation.
Lex, tell us in the city of Basel how the club is important in this moment.
Well, it's probably first and foremost, I think anything at the moment would give people a bit of an uplift in their moods. Most of the Swiss people are staying at home at the moment in their apartments, and I think football could do a great job at, even if it's behind closed doors, give people something to discuss and be entertained by. Ultimately, that's what we're doing, right? We're entertaining people. And in that sense, football is important to the people, and we are still a relevant topic in the news. People still like to discuss about all sorts of things at the moment. It's probably not the results, but then they want to know how are the discussions going with the players, what's happening at the end of the season. There's still a huge interest in us and sort of the what's happening around the club. So I do sense that regardless of the situation, the wider situation at the moment, football has relevance, and hopefully as well we'll be able to contribute once we get back to normalish times to help people connect with each other again. Hopefully go to the games again sooner rather than later, and invite people to connect again. I think there is something that football can do in that sense, and we're trying to put together also a few projects that will hopefully, in the next couple of months, depending on how this all evolves, allow people to come together in step by step and sort of interact with the football club more and more again. Until we hopefully have a scenario again where people can go to the stadium and watch games as they used to before. And so there's definitely that step-by-step approach that we are encouraging and that we're building.
Well, one question that we add as well is a question regarding how it works with club, with negotiation of the various contracts. Do you have the impression? It's just an impression in the month you just had that the collective bargaining versus individual bargaining make a huge difference in the different country where you are?
Should I go again on this one? Or how? I think there is an obvious reason that why CBAs are probably at the moment a bit more simple to deal with, because you're dealing with one party on the other side of the table, and usually, or maybe two, but not 20 different ones in each team, or 25 different ones in each team, where everything has to be negotiated individually, and also that alone gives you the opportunity to find agreements much quicker. At FC Basel, we have players who are, the salaries of the players are on a huge spectrum. So the youngest earn a fraction of that what the eldest earn, and so finding a one size fits all solution is almost impossible for us. So there is an obvious advantage with CBAs. Just my.
So tell us a bit, Tang, about China. How this relation, because you had a longer experience with that. As a league and as clubs, this pyramid, that we teach in our classes, does it work?
I think at the league in China, particularly the China Super League, in the past 3 or 4 years, most of the club have been overspending, according to their financial revenue capabilities. Majority of the club are actually sponsors by their own owners. So they've been spent hugely on particularly cost of players, and also particularly international players. I think during this time, and even before the virus outbroke, that the league has been also readjusting, putting some salary cap, also the cap that how much you can invest, try to keep the league a more competitive balance, but also more financially healthy. And now with the virus situation, some of the sponsors will be potentially reduce the level of sponsor fee, and also losing some of the attendance revenues. So I think collectively, most of the clubs actually are on the same direction to see how can actually use this time to readjust the spending level. I think that's basically individual effort, but also collectively for the benefit of all goods for the league. And for our club in Chengdu, this is a city of 15 million people. So only have two professional clubs in the city. So the fans are still missing football. And then in terms of the sponsors, I think they're still quite engaged at the moment with us. But the question is really, how do we make up some of the revenue loss during this time? I think in terms of the Chinese FA management, they probably need to take more responsibility to coordinate between the China Super League, but also the league level below, to introduce, but also to actually enforce what we call the financial fair play regulations, or the club licensing regulations here. Because as you probably heard, there's so many clubs, particularly in the second division, financially, at the verge of bankrupting, and there's actually, in fact, 7 clubs, are dismissed during this time in the second division, and then 1 club in the China Super League is also financially, struggling. So it's a tough time, but also we still believe football has huge passion in this country, and then if we can work out, the best way to protect the benefit and the league and the economic module, I think that's the most important thing. That once we get out of this difficult time.
I think that as a last round to finish, I would like to ask all of you how the cultural specificities of each of your nation, you believe, may make it difficult to exchange results, or do you think a lot is possible to share what is going? I believe that the majority of the people that follow us today are current, past, or future people who are willing to be engaged with sports management, who are willing to be engaged with professional behavior in dealing with clubs. So how do you believe that all what you have experienced can be shared and can be, well, transferred in different cultures. Is your impression that really the reality of each of the club is so different that very little can be done, or are we at the start of a more cooperative behavior in dealing between the clubs? Who want to start? And I will give the floor to each of you. So starting with Betsy and finishing with Louis. Okay, Betsy, Alex, Tang, Barbara, and Louis.
Yeah, sure. I think we can definitely learn from each other, whether it's best practices or different ideas that we're all sharing right here. But specific markets have to depend on what works in your market, whether it's financial constraints, size constraints. We have different constraints within our own country. When you look at a city of the size of Kansas City versus Los Angeles versus New York. So, the other part of my job is I work a lot with the youth academy. So we had kids in residency, so I had to make sure 20 odd kids, went home. And the other kind of thing we haven't touched on is, yes, we have this huge pro club, but we all need to. We've talked about how we're going to help with the community and the sponsors and all that, but also I think we all have to take the responsibility to grow the sport within our city and our territory. So is there going to be a large fallout with, youth sports, and will the moms and dads let youth players come back and engage with not only recreational and youth soccer, but then start attending our matches, which is obviously a whole another topic and could be a whole nother session. But I think, yes, we can learn, but you got to take what you learn and make it applicable to your own market.
I agree with Betsy on her points. I think for Switzerland or for the sort of Central European market, clubs can obviously learn from each other. I think the cultural differences within Europe are probably not as big as they are between continents. I'd say though that we've already seen in Germany and also in France, but also in England, certain examples. David might be able to say more about that, where clubs see this as just another competitive scenario, and ultimately, the better you have prepared yourself in the past for harsh times, the better you will come out of this one. And so I think in Switzerland the clubs are talking to each other, and we're finding common ground, and we're trying to shift things around a little bit. But ultimately, I think definitely amongst sort of the bigger players, there is a huge competitive thinking, and I don't think that we're gonna share too much about how we're dealing with our own situations. Always trying to exploit that extra % of competitive advantage out of this situation, which I think is unfortunate, but that's a reality.
I think there's definitely learnings and sharings between clubs, but also across countries. In our group, as I mentioned, we have 8 clubs in a different continent. Just before this call, actually, I have a call with another 7 clubs, in New York, in Manchester, Japan, India. So we're actually updating each other across our group, within our group, the different clubs, what they're doing to helping the fans and communities, but also to address the concerns and questions from the fans, the community, the sponsors, but also to talk about how to keep our youth development project, for the time being. I think there's definitely lots of practice that we can learn from each other. I think the important thing is also there's a commonality in this difficult time in different cultures, but there's also some different unique situations in each countries. in the way that the Chinese league is structured or is financially regulated is maybe different than what is in Europe. And also the stage of football culture here in China is also maybe different than what is in Manchester. So we probably just need to recognize that difference, but also to learn from each other, the good ideas, the best practice. I think this particularly around this time. I mean, football is a global language, and then we will fight together at this difficult time as a global family. I think that's sort of the key learnings I sort of take away. Yeah.
Well, of course, I have to agree with Tang, with Alex, and with Betsy. I've also learned a lot speaking today with them. So I think it's very important, yes, to maintain communication with other clubs, with other countries, and see how they are going. More specifically, maybe in your own region, because it's more easy, or the reality might be closer. But I also consider very important the graduation formation in management, which we didn't say still, but it helps you with the empathy and helps you in a situation of a crisis like this one, take the best, be able to observe and take the best decisions. Of course, here in Argentina also, every club will do the things that believe it's better for the club. And in that sense, maybe we can copy actions or do actions in together, but specifically every club will be unique in its decisions, and then we'll share them, of course, and make actions in together, but not all decisions together. And for us, it's very important in Racing the sense of belonging, and that's what we want to transmit, and that's how we engage with our fans, and how we engage with the people and the kids, and the kids also that live in Racing, that went home. We are in contact every day with them. And if they need economic help, we'll send them a help. For them, once this crisis is over, they can come back and feel Racing as their home. And I think that's a very key, important element we have, and that we use with all our kids. That's why all the kids we have worldwide now playing, like Lautaro Martinez, Inter, Rodrigo de Paul, and very big figures. They don't doubt when they come back to Argentina, and they will definitely play in Racing.
So yes, I'll unite with everyone else here today by saying that cooperation is essential and should be encouraged, but cannot be taken for granted every time, because every club, every league is structured differently financially first. The French model, for instance, is completely different than the English model, which is different from the Spanish model. So in the end, we cannot financially copy another system that works somewhere else. Secondly, the structure, MLS would be completely irrelevant for a club like us. We cannot copy the same structure as well. So we cannot, again, imitate what worked for them. And finally, within Spain, we're a smaller club. So what worked for a bigger club would not work for us. And we have in the third division, the Segunda B, what we call the filiales, the clubs that are the smaller branches of bigger clubs. So for instance, you have Sevilla, they have Atletico Sevilla, which is like Sevilla C. We have Madrid and Barca, they have their teams B. We have Cordoba, which is a team B. These clubs have a different model, which us cannot imitate as well, because they have different financial means, they have different incomes, they have different source of revenue, they have different type of fund management. For instance, you have clubs with socios and clubs who are not owned by socios. For us, we're in an awkward situation. We're in the middle of transitioning from a, let's say, regular club to a socio-based club. So we were in the middle of the whole transaction thing. We have to freeze that out. So everything is extremely different from a place to another and from a division to another. So we tend to communicate with other clubs in the region and in the Segunda B, Group 4, because if you pass from south Spain to the middle Spain, where Castilla is, where Madrid is, it's a completely different model as well for many clubs. So yes, community, yes, discussing with other clubs is essential, but then you cannot rely on that essentially, because every club will have different solutions for the same problem. So again, the way they do things, maybe we could try and rely on one another towards the community engagement system, which is in the end very similar for everyone. But more than that would be taking a risk to aggravate the situation by taking solutions from other people instead of trying to find your own solutions, instead of trying to innovate depending on what you have. You cannot just rely on what other people have and will give you. At some point, the crisis situation requires that you express and demonstrate your skills towards your own club. You cannot just adapt and take whatever comes from any other person. You have to find a solution in a rapid way and then implement it. And if you can help anyone else in the same situation as yours, that would be good. But a lot of warning in our division, because for our size, we cannot just afford to go with what works globally. It's very sensitive.
Well, we are coming to the end. I would first of all like to thank all 5 of you for your time, and I think it's was a very useful understanding of what the situation is in football clubs, because the basis of football are the clubs. I would like to thank you all, and I would like to say to our audience, next webinar of the CIES will be next Wednesday at the same time. The title will be Sport Industry, Startups and Innovation, Crisis and Opportunities, and with the presence of Charles Frémont, Director of Le Tremplin in Paris and an alumni of the FIFA Master of 2015, of Pedro Presa Rodriguez, who is the co-founder and the CEO of My Kuju Television and an alumni of the FIFA Master 2009, and Sebastian Rubio, Director of ZSZ Sports in Peru, and an alumni of the Universidad Católica Argentina 2010, and our coordinator in Peru. So thank you again, and see you next week. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. See you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.